The 12-6 elbow rule. There's a legal way to slice someone open with an elbow in the UFC, and then there's the 12-6 elbow, which somehow became the sport's forbidden strike. This rule bans fighters from throwing a straight up to straight down elbow. Think of your arm moving like the hands of a clock from 12 to 6. Why is that specific motion illegal? Blame the early days of MMA regulation. When athletic commissions saw martial artists breaking bricks with downward elbows on late-night TV, they panicked. Instead of researching it, they wrote it off as too dangerous and locked it into the rule book. What's wild is that elbows from all other angles, diagonal, horizontal, spinning, are totally fine. Fighters can smash noses sideways or drop elbows in crucifix positions, and that's legal. But drop your elbow straight down, and that's a foul. The most famous victim of the rule was John Jones, who in 2009 was dominating Matt Hamill before landing a series of 12-6 elbows on the ground. The ref stepped in, ruled it a disqualification, and handed Jones the first and only loss of his career. He's been undefeated otherwise. That call still haunts debates today. Despite years of criticism, the rule hasn't changed. Grounded opponent and illegal knees. This rule has caused more chaos than any other in modern UFC, the infamous grounded opponent rule. It states that you cannot knee or kick a fighter in the head if they're considered grounded. The weird part? A fighter is grounded if just a single knee, hand, or even fingertip is touching the mat. That's it. One pinky down and they're off limits. The loophole? Fighters figured it out fast. They'll crouch and play the hand game, repeatedly touching the mat with one finger just to bait their opponent into throwing an illegal knee. Some even pretend to be grounded mid-scramble just to buy time. When that knee does land, everything stops. Instant foul, point deductions, and sometimes even a DQ. This rule exploded in controversy when Petr Yan kneed Aljamain Sterling in the head while he was grounded in a championship fight. Sterling couldn't continue. The fight was ruled illegal, and he was awarded the title. That moment sparked one of the most divisive debates in UFC history. Referees now have to guess intent in real time, and fighters have to decide whether to risk throwing or hold back. It's a mess. Fence grabbing. You're getting taken down, your back's heading for the canvas, and your last instinct is to reach out and grab something. In the UFC, that something is often the cage, and it's illegal. Fence grabbing gives fighters an unfair edge by stopping takedowns, stalling scrambles, or helping them stand up without earning it. According to the rulebook, it's a foul, clear as day, but how it's enforced, that's where things get messy. Sometimes a fighter grabs the cage for half a second and the ref gives a warning. Other times it's a full-on grip that halts a takedown and the ref lets it slide. It's not consistent, and that inconsistency affects outcomes. There are fights where one fence grab stopped a round-winning slam, or where a fighter held on just long enough to avoid a dominant position. It's happening in big fights too. Israel Adesanya grabbed the fence during key moments against Marvin Vettori. Kamaru Usman's fingers found the cage more than once, and yet very few points get taken. The most you'll see is a slap on the wrist or a verbal warning, even if it changes the round. The UFC has tried to crack down. Some referees have started deducting points immediately, while others still let it slide. Until it's enforced uniformly, fighters will keep using it as a get-out-of-jail-free card, a foul that can steal a position and never show up on the scorecard. The 10-point must system. Scoring in the UFC is judged round by round by using the 10-point must system, the same one boxing's used for decades. It means the winner of each round gets 10 points. The loser gets 9 or fewer. It sounds simple until you realize how broken it gets in actual fights. A fighter can barely edge out of 2 rounds and get completely dominated in the third and still win the decision. It doesn't matter how close or lopsided the rounds were, each one holds the same weight. That structure has led to some of the most outrageous scorecards in MMA history, like Diego Sanchez versus Ross Pearson, where Pearson landed more strikes, controlled the cage, and took less damage, yet somehow lost a decision nearly everyone watching disagreed with. The system doesn't reward overall fight dominance, it rewards narrowly winning more rounds, even if your opponent had one monster round that nearly finished you. To make it worse, the judges aren't always MMA experts. Some are boxing judges applying outdated thinking to takedowns, cage control, and submission attempts. And since there's no transparency mid-fight, fans are left guessing how each round was scored until it's over. There's been talk about switching to open scoring or adopting Pride's method of judging the fight as a whole, but until that happens, the 10-point must system stays. No strikes to the back of the head. This rule seems simple on paper. Don't punch the back of the head. But in the UFC, even a clean strike can get you in trouble if it lands in the wrong zone. The back of the head is officially designed as the mohawk area, the 1-inch wide strip running down the center of the skull. Anything on that line, especially during ground and pound or scrambles, is considered illegal. The issue? Fights are chaotic. Fighters move, duck, twist, and roll. A punch aimed for the ear can land half an inch too far and suddenly it's a foul. Referees are forced to make split-second decisions. Did the strike land illegally? Was it intentional? Did it affect the fight? Plenty of bouts have been altered by this rule. In 2013, Travis Brown knocked out Gabriel Gonzaga with a barrage of elbows. Afterward, Gonzaga's team claimed the shots were to the back of the head. The win stood, but in other cases, refs have paused the action or even stopped fights entirely. The intent matters too. A grazing shot during a scramble might get a warning. A full-force hammer fist while a guy's face is turned away could cost you a point or the fight. Fans often boo when a bout ends on this technicality, but the rule's there for a reason. Repeated trauma to the back of the skull is one of the most dangerous things in combat sports, and when it lands, the rule takes over, no matter how wild the fight was going. Eye pokes and open hand defense. The UFC bans eye pokes. Obvious, right? Except the way fighters hold their hands makes it a problem nearly every card. The rules say any direct poke to the eye is illegal, but what's legal and wildly risky is extending your finger straight out while you're measuring distance. It's called the open hand defense. Fighters use it all the time to keep opponents away or gauge range without throwing a strike, and that's where things go sideways. When someone lunges in and catches a finger in the eye, the fight stops immediately. The ref gives a warning, maybe calls the doctor, and if the injured fighter can't continue, it can result in a no contest or even a disqualification. It sounds rare, but it's happened often enough to derail entire fights. One of the most notorious moments, Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. In round 2, Edwards extended his hand to keep range, and Bilal ran straight into a nasty eye poke. The fight ended right there. No winner, no resolution, just frustration all around. Short grabbing and glove control. In a sport where inches matter, grabbing your opponent's shorts or gloves can flip a whole fight. That's exactly why it's banned. But enforcing it, that's a whole different story. The UFC's rulebook clearly states fighters can't grab clothing or stick their fingers inside an opponent's gloves. It gives too much control in the clinch and during takedowns. A little tug on the waistband or a sneaky glove hold can stall movement or even reverse positions without skill. The problem is how subtle it can be. Fighters will hook a glove edge mid-scramble or yank a waistband just long enough to shift balance. Refs are trained to spot it, but during fast-paced transitions or wild brawls, it's easy to miss. There have been fights where the cameras catch a blatant glove grab and the ref doesn't see it. No warning, no point deduction, and no replay to fix it. Fans rage, corners protest, but the bout rolls on. Even when it's caught live, most of the time it's just a warning, unless it's repeated or egregious. No towel throwing allowed. In boxing, when a corner knows their fighter's done, they throw in the towel. It's dramatic, it's final, and it's accepted. In the UFC, that towel means nothing. Officially, only the referee or ringside doctor can stop a fight. Corners are not allowed to end the bout by tossing in a towel. If they do, it's considered an unauthorized signal, and refs are trained to ignore it. The rule comes straight from the unified rules of MMA. The thinking is simple. In a fast-paced cage fight, the ref is best positioned to determine when a fighter's in real danger. A towel flying over the fence might be missed, misread, or even accidentally thrown by a fan. There have been moments where corners still tried. During a 2014 bout between Nate Diaz and Rafael Dos Anjos, Nate's corner repeatedly considered throwing in the towel after a brutal beating. They didn't because it wouldn't have changed anything. More recently, a few coaches have attempted to wave off fights mid-round, only to be ignored by officials following protocol. Fence cut restarts. In MMA, the ground game is often where the real chess match begins. Guard passes, submission setups, and top control battles. But sometimes the referee hits pause. That's because under the unified rules, referees have the authority to restart the fight if they think there's a lack of action. Even if one fighter's in a dominant position, if it looks like nothing's happening, the ref can step in and stand both fighters up. This rule was meant to keep the action flowing and the crowd engaged, but in practice, it's caused some serious controversy. Imagine spending a full training camp drilling takedowns, finally getting your opponent down, fighting for position, only for the ref to reset the fight because it looks stalled. There have been several moments where ground specialists lost progress due to premature stand-up. In 2020, Claudio Silva was in full control on the mat against James Krause, only to have the fight stood up mid-transition. Fans and analysts were furious. The ref saw inactivity, everyone else saw strategy. And the problem is consistency. One ref might give you 30 seconds to work from the mount, another might stand you up in half the time. There's no official timer, just judgment. Some fighters beg mid-round for just a little more time. Others lose key positions without even knowing why. Towelgate and weigh-in cheating. Making weight's one of the most stressful parts of fight week. Fighters dehydrate, starve, and sweat out every ounce. When they step on that scale, everything's on the line. But in 2017, Daniel Cormier gave the world a moment that instantly became UFC folklore. Towelgate. After missing weight on his first try, Cormier returned just minutes later and magically hit the mark. The trick? He subtly pressed down on the towel being held in front of him, redistributing enough weight to shave off the excess. The footage went viral. Cormier's hands gripped the towel as he leaned slightly forward. The scale dropped into place. Officials didn't notice and the fight went ahead. Later, the New York State Athletic Commission admitted they had no rule in place to stop it, a loophole exposed in real time. Since then, commissions have gotten stricter. Now fighters can't touch anything. Not the towel, not the scale, not the table. Officials watch every movement. Fish hooking, headbutts, and groin shots. There are a few things you simply don't do in a UFC fight, and they're not up for debate. Fish hooking, headbutting, and groin strikes sit high on that list. All three are banned under the unified rules, and for good reason. Fish hooking, jamming your fingers into your opponent's mouth or nose to pull, can cause serious facial damage. So dirty that it rarely even happens, and when it does, the ref steps in immediately. Headbutts, on the other hand, used to be legal in the early UFC days. They were raw, brutal, and effective inside the guard. But once Athletic Commission stepped in, they outlawed them across the board. Today, even an accidental clash of heads can stop a fight. If it causes a cut and the bout can't continue, it goes to the scorecards or ends in a no contest, depending on when it happened. Then there are groin shots, legal in pro wrestling, totally banned in MMA. Fighters wear cups, but even with protection, one low kick can fold a grown man instantly. If it happens, the injured fighter gets up to 5 minutes to recover. If they can't continue, the result depends on timing. Early in the fight, no contest. Late in the fight, it might go to a decision. All three are considered serious fouls, and while they rarely look intentional, they've ended fights, altered careers, and sparked some of the most uncomfortable moments in UFC history. Sudden death and draw rules. Most fans assume UFC fights end with a winner and a loser, but when all three judges score the bout even, it's ruled a draw. And that's where things get complicated. The UFC doesn't use sudden death rounds, even in razor-close title fights. If it's tied after 3 or 5 rounds, the bout simply ends, and both fighters walk away without a win. This wasn't always the case. On The Ultimate Fighter, when fights were tied after 2 rounds, a sudden death round decided who advanced. That's where Nate Diaz famously went to war with Gray Maynard. The 3rd round wasn't optional, it was survival. But that rule applied only to exhibition-style reality fights. Once you enter the official UFC record books, sudden death vanishes. When a main event ends in a draw, there's no redo on the spot. Fighters need a full rematch scheduled months later, often throwing off rankings and title shots. In 2016, Tyron Woodley versus Stephen Thompson ended in a majority draw. The title stayed with Woodley, but neither man walked out fully satisfied. There's been talk about bringing in a tiebreaker round, especially for title fights, but commissions haven't pulled the trigger yet. Fighter walkout rules. When fighters step out of the tunnel, music blasting and lights flashing, that moment feels raw and personal, but behind the scenes it's locked down by strict rules. Walkouts are timed, scripted, and surprisingly regulated. Fighters usually have just 90 seconds to make it to the octagon once their name is called. Any delay can trigger fines or warnings from the commission. Then there's the wardrobe. As of 2015, fighters lost the freedom to wear any brand or message on their gear. The UFC's exclusive outfitting deal, first with Reebok, now with Venom, means all shorts, shirts, and gear are standardized. No more custom sponsors, no more flags with slogans, and no last-second protest messages. In 2022, the UFC went a step further and banned all national flags from being carried to the cage after several politically charged incidents and rising global tensions. Walkout songs are also reviewed in advance. Explicit tracks often get flagged or muted on broadcast. Even celebration props and corner behavior are under commission review. Everything's about maintaining image and flow for broadcast timing, for sponsor exposure, and for control. So while walkouts might feel spontaneous, every second is choreographed down to the second. And that's it. So now that you know the weirdest rules shaping UFC history, which one do you think should be broken first? Or better yet, if you could invent your own outrageous rule for the octagon, what would it be? Share your thoughts in the comments section below.